taken from John chapter 12, verses 1 through 8. You'll find the Pew Bible on page 1115. 1115, and I will be reading from the King James Version, which is what you'll find in the Pew Bibles before you. As we look at this chapter today, the 12th chapter of John, we find Jesus has been traveling around Israel, back and forth, in some ways trying to stay out of the limelight. The Pharisees, as we learned, are trying to kill him, trying to put him away. And as he would tell his disciples, my time has not yet come. We know that when he was finally nailed to the cross and killed, it happened during the Passover, and Jesus is the Passover lamb. And I'm sure that he was waiting for the Passover before he would finally enter into Jerusalem, knowing that it would be his time. But here he is, and as we look at this chapter today, he's back in Bethany. He has raised Lazarus from the dead. And we learned Lazarus had been dead for quite a few days. And Jesus finally came at the urging of Lazarus' sister Martha to the site where Lazarus was and actually raised him up from the dead. At that point, Lazarus became a marked man. The Pharisees now and the Sadducees were looking for Lazarus as well, because the whole community had been talking about Lazarus. How Jesus had miraculously raised him from the dead. And what better way to quell all the rumors was to put Lazarus away. So now you find that Lazarus is kind of laying alone too as well. But now Jesus goes to Lazarus' house. Lazarus lives with his sister Mary and his sister Martha. We know from Scripture that Martha was the one that was always in the kitchen preparing things, and Mary was the one that always sat at Jesus' feet, listening to him, listening to the stories, and listening to the stories about the kingdom of God. So here he is, he's in Bethany, just a breath away from Jerusalem. He's with Lazarus, he's with Mary, he's with Martha, trying to relax probably with all the company around him. And let's read John 12 to see what happens here. Then Jesus, 6 days before the Passover, came to Bethany, where Lazarus was which had been dead, whom he raised from the dead. There they made him supper, and Martha served. But Lazarus was one of them that sat at the table with him. Then took Mary a pound of ointment of spikenard, very costly, and anointed the feet of Jesus, and wiped his feet with her hair. And the house was filled with the odor of the ointment. Then saith one of his disciples, Judas Iscariot, Simon's son, which should betray him, why was not this ointment sold for 300 pence and given to the poor? This he said, not that he cared for the poor, but because he was a thief. And he had the bag, and there what was put therein. Then said Jesus, let her alone. Against the day of my burying hath she kept this. But the poor always ye have with you, but me ye have not always. May the Lord bless to our understanding this reading today. You know, I heard a story this week about the woman that was traveling along and following behind a car, probably a little bit too close, when the light turned yellow. Now, when we're in Florida, when I learned down in Florida, the light turns yellow, you speed up so you don't have to wait for the red light. It might be that way around, but in Florida it's even worse. But the man in front did stop for the light, and she didn't expect it at all. Had to slam on her brakes and missed him by just a couple of inches. And she started to rant and rave, swear, and beat the horn, she started hollering out the window at the guy, and a cop came along and arrested her. Threw her in jail. He actually booked her, took her picture, took her fingerprints, and she sat in jail cell for about 2 hours. Finally, the desk sergeant came over. He says, "I'm sorry." He said, "What's happened?" He said, "We're going to release you." He says, "I really have to apologize for the officer and what happened." She said, "Why did he arrest me?" He said, "Well, you had a bumper sticker on your car. What would Jesus do?" And on the other side, you had another bumper sticker, "Follow me to Sunday school." And you had one of those fish that are on there that is a sign of a Christian. You thought a Christian couldn't be driving this car. You thought you stole it. Sometimes there's mistaken behavior, mistaken identity because of behavior of people, and we wonder why people act the way they do in certain situations. And Judas Iscariot, the one who ended up betraying Jesus, he had the same problem. Why in the world will Mary take this expensive perfume? If you look at the other version in the RSV, it says it's 300 denarii. You look at another version, it says that it was worth a year's wages. Well, a year's wages, I looked it up. A year's wages in Vermont, the average wage is $51,000. Wow. Now you can imagine that perfume was worth today $51,000. It would be like her saving that up in her house, probably for a rainy day, if things really got really bad in her life. $51,000, and Judas does not understand this. He just doesn't get it. Why in the world would she take that expensive perfume and anoint his feet and wash his feet? He knew that Lazarus had been raised from the dead. He knew how grateful Mary and Martha had been. He had seen Lazarus dead. He had seen Lazarus come out of that tomb. And he had to understand that Mary was just trying to thank Jesus in the only way that she could by sacrificing or offering the most valuable thing she had in her possession. But when she pours it out on Jesus' feet, he complains. What a waste of a lot of money. But what's considered a lot of money today? Have you had a loved one and the doctor said if you come up with a certain amount of money, we'll save your loved one? Wouldn't you do everything in the world that you could to save that loved one? Isn't that worth a lot of money? Aren't our loved ones worthy of some type of sacrificial love themselves? And then we ask ourselves, what is sacrificial love? Jesus talks about sacrificial love and how we think of how he sacrificed himself out of love for all of us. The sacrificial love is where we have to give up something of value. The most valuable thing to us is our lives. Jesus gave his life for all of us. What's more valuable than that? He even tells it in John 15:13, just a little while later in his book of John. He says, "Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one life for a friend." There's a story about a Civil War farmer, and he was drafted to go into the army. Now, he wasn't a coward, but he knew that if he went, he would leave a motherless family behind. And he was worried about his children, worried about the farm, didn't know what he was going to do without a breadwinner at the farm to take care of the family. But a neighbor, Charles Durham was his name, he stepped forward and said, "I will go in your stead." In those days, you could easily do that. You could swap off one draft choice for another. And all the village turned out for when Charles Durham marched off to war. And it was in the first battle that Durham fought in that he was killed. And the paper came out the next day, and the farmer had noticed that he was missing in action. And he went to the field of battle, and he actually found the body of Charles Durham, and he brought it back to his village. And he went through the chore of having him prepared for burial, putting him in the cemetery and actually carving out a small marble monument. And he put the monument in front, and you can just picture him as he's placing the monument over this grave, weeping. And the townspeople turning out, watching this whole scenario take place. And on the monument, he put on the monument just a small saying, C.D. Charles Darwin, he died for me. That's sacrificial love, isn't it? If we think about what is sacrificial love, and what Jesus is telling us is Jesus, the one who died for me, is telling us today, he's saying it's the sacrificial love, telling us that we need to care for each other. And that money, it's not about the money, it's about the love. It's about how we treat each other, how we care for each other. And he knows that Judas doesn't care for the poor. Because the scripture says that he would reach in and take money out of the money box whenever he wanted to, rather than giving it to the poor. Judas only cared about himself. And then he comes to Mary's rescue when she's chastised by Judas. And he comes to her rescue, and he's basically telling her, leave her alone. The poor you'll always have with you. But you're not always going to have me with you. At least not physically. You're not going to have me with you. The perfume that was intended for him was probably intended for the day of his burial. And she was giving it to him now. When my mother-in-law was alive, she used to always say, when I die, I don't want you to give me flowers. You want to give me flowers now. I know I did the funeral for her. Thought I had the last word. She told me I wasn't going to get the last word. But I remember Mary Lou coming forward and putting one single flower onto that casket in honor of her mother. She didn't bring a whole bouquet of flowers. And now we would pick flowers or something along the roadside to bring flowers to her mom, to honor her mom, to honor her mom's request. That's the same thing that's happening here. Mary has this perfume, the same worth $51,000, arguably. Has this perfume, she's going to give it to Jesus now. She's not going to wait. Let's give it to him now. Let's take care of him now. It's symbolic. But she's recognizing the fact that he is going to die and he's not going to be with her forever. In fact, she heard him say in John 7:33, just a little before that, Jesus said, I am with you only for a short time, and then I go to the one who sent me. The disciples didn't get that. They didn't understand that. They didn't think Jesus was going to die. Mary got it. Maybe because Mary was the one who always sat at his feet and really listened to what he had to say. She got it, and now she's symbolically preparing him for his burial. With his spikenard, they call it. She's giving it to Jesus. This is the same perfume that they would use to anoint his body. They didn't embalm in those days. What you would do is use all this expensive perfume and wrap the body to keep it from smelling and decay. She's showing her devotion to Jesus now before it's too late. It's like giving him roses while he's alive, not waiting for the funeral. It's an act of love. It's an expression of love, her love and her gratitude to Jesus. And the only way she knew how to be grateful. Take what meant so much to her. Thank him. Thank him for raising her brother from the dead. Thank him for being her Savior. It's her way of saying goodbye. And I can imagine that smell stayed in that room for a long time. They said smell was the last thing to go. Every time she walked in that room, she could be reminded of Jesus. Think about that. You walk into a room, all you can think about is Jesus. The one who loved her his life for her. That her actions symbolized God's grace. Like the perfume that's poured out from that bottle. Like Jesus' blood that's poured out on the cross. Jesus knew in his heart that he was going to be martyred. That he was going to be killed. He knew that. He knew that a day would come when he'd no longer be with us. We need to ask ourselves today, can we be the same faithful followers as Mary? To follow him all the way to the cross and beyond? Can we avoid the pitfalls of a world that doesn't even believe in him? Or will we follow Jesus? He's not looking for part-time Christians. And he's really, you think about it, he's not looking for followers. He's looking for disciples. Somebody to give all. Give the most expensive thing that you have. And what is that? It's our time. It's our time. What better thing can we give to Christ than our time? Mary is a model of faithful discipleship. And her gift is out of thanksgiving. It's out of the gratefulness of Jesus. We have to ask ourselves, are we willing to sit at the feet? Are we willing to take the sacrificial steps and give of our time, give of our effort to Jesus? Are we willing to put all that first? Are we willing to take all of our precious time for our Lord? When we're in Israel, and what's interesting, we visited the Sea of Galilee. We went out on the boat, and we threw the net over the right side of the boat, and we went to the left side, still been catching fish. But they tell me the Sea of Galilee is teeming with fish, even today. And then we went on that journey down to the Dead Sea. They told us if we went in, don't go underwater. Don't swallow any of the water. Don't get it in your nose. Don't get it in your ears because you'll die. Both of those seas are fed by the same source. It's the River Jordan. One of them is teeming with life. The other one's dead. You ask yourself, it's the same source. How can it be such a different reaction? But if you look at the Sea of Galilee, it receives from the River Jordan, but it gives out again. Whatever comes in goes out. In the Dead Sea, whatever comes in stays in. There is no exit. There's no exit from the water that comes in. One is receiving and flowing, the other one is receiving and stagnant. One's alive, the other one is dead. It's the same as people in this world. Those that receive and refuse to give, and those who receive and they keep on giving. Those are like Mary, who truly loved Jesus. Took the most worthy thing in her house and anointed him. The ones that can't do enough for him. The ones who always want to be around him, sitting at his feet. Who willingly give all to our Savior. Would you pray with me, please? Dear Heavenly Father, what value can we place on our earthly possessions? What value can we place on human life itself? What value can we place on a relationship with Jesus? We look to Mary for a model of thanksgiving and faithfulness. And help us to always have the courage to sit at his feet, to walk alongside of him on this journey that we have called life. Maybe even help him carry his cross. We ask in Jesus' name.